Welcome to Meas-Maz TV and this week's Real People's Real Stories. And this one is one with a little bit of a difference. It's me interviewing my mum, which actually, do you know, weirdest thing, we have never done this before.
No, we haven't, no.
And I feel a bit nervous, I'm not going to lie to you. And I don't know why, because you shouldn't do, should you? And I can't, you know, sort of all the years of broadcasting, never actually interviewed you, and all the interviews you've done. How do you think this is going to pan out?
I have no idea. Let's see what happens.
Well, let's do it. So what we're here for today is to explore, and I can say it because, yeah, I am biased, the remarkable story that is what you've achieved, Mum. And, you know, we wanted to do this because I think there are times when I'm telling people things and people don't know it because it's our life, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it's really nice to explore that. So if we go from the beginning, obviously you were brought up Long Eaton Way, weren't you?
Yes, yeah, brought up in Breaston, and my mum died when I was 16, and her mum had had breast cancer twice and died from ovarian cancer. Then when my mum died from breast cancer, I was very concerned that this could be hereditary. So I went to the GP and I said, could it be hereditary? And he said, no.
Can we just go back a bit on that, though? Because
Sure.
we have never explored, right, you growing up, well, not growing up, but not having a mum from 16. Because I tell you why, I can't imagine my life without you ever. Why am I going to cry already? So I want to know, like, how you became such a strong person when you didn't have that sort of motherly figure for you. Because I know where I get mine from, it's you. So, you know.
Well, in fact, it was only about a year later that Dad remarried and married Olive. And she always said that she didn't want to mother me, or me and Diane, but she did want to be a friend. And we all got on so well. And I think I was at that age, 16, 17. You're very selfish at that age, you know. You want to go out, you're aware of your own bodies, you're interested in boys, you know, it's all clothes, boys, whatever. And yes, obviously I missed my mum, but probably not as much at 16 as I would have done at younger or even older, actually.
Yeah, I can understand
You perhaps can get that.
You've invested.
I did, obviously. I was devastated and I couldn't get it, but I did adapt, and Olive took her place in a different sort of way, and she introduced me to so much musical theatre, particularly, and singing, and that's been a massive part of a huge part of my life.
With Auntie Diane, though, so obviously Auntie Diane was a couple of years younger than you. Did you sort of find that bonded you more, you and Auntie Diane, or did you feel conscious that you would have to maybe look after her, or did Grandma just literally just stand in straight away?
Yeah, as I say, that first year, I think there was quite a close. You know, we did become very close, Diane and I, because obviously if Dad was at work, I mean, I was there babysitting and one thing and another. Not that she needed babysitting; she was 12, but. You know, she certainly needed companionship and
love.
Yeah, we did get a good close relationship, and have maintained it solidly ever since. And I mean solidly. We have never ever had any upsets, which is, I know, a sweeping statement, but it's actually true.
And I find that very difficult because you are stubborn when you want to be.
Well, she isn't.
Exactly. That's exactly the point. But I was saying, and so from that moment, like, this is why I always sort of wanted to kind of touch on it, because we don't really talk about that, you know, and bereavement's a horrific thing. And I always thank my stars and then touch wood that I've never really suffered it directly.
No.
Yet it's been a huge focal point around our family, or maybe the potential threat of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one of the things that I was most frightened of, was developing breast cancer and dying.
So that fear, was that straight away after your mum died, or was it at diagnosis?
No, of mum's
your mum's
diagnosis.
diagnosis, yeah.
No, because I didn't know about mum's diagnosis. I was in France, actually, and I came back to visit my pen friend, came back, and I was told she'd had a mastectomy because she got breast cancer, and I didn't know anything at all about breast cancer.
I was going to say, was
I
the
knew
word
nothing.
mastectomy even sort of
Not
used a lot
really,
then?
no. And then she seemed to be fine. And then a year later, she had to go and have radiotherapy. And the doctors, well, in fact, I later found out that they'd said to me, Dad, that there's nothing that could be done.
Really?
But Dad said to us, he said that she's going to get worse before she gets better. And I believed that. I absolutely, although I was now, 16, I absolutely believed that. And, as she got worse and worse and thinner, I got frustrated that nobody was taking her into hospital, putting her on a drip or something to feed her up. I just couldn't get it. I thought, well, if this is getting worse before you get better, what's going on? It's crackers. Anyway, obviously, as time went on, she did die, and it was terribly sad. And Dad kept us occupied all the time, and we weren't in the house when she died. We were at... they obviously knew it was imminent, and we went to Auntie Kath's, and then had a phone call, and Uncle Gordon came and fetched us, and we went back home, and Dad says, "I'm very sorry to say, upset to tell you that your mum's passed away." And I didn't actually, I don't know quite what I thought, really. We went into the bedroom to see her, and there'd been
So you did see her there?
Oh, I did, yeah. The thing is that for those last couple of days, she had this death rattle thing.
You didn't want to hear it?
Oh, it was awful. When you hear somebody trying to breathe that can't, it's the most horrific noise. You don't want to be... this expression, you wouldn't let an animal go through that, is absolutely true. Yeah, absolutely. And so she did look at peace, which I know is a very, very weird thing.
But they say it, don't they?
Yeah,
People
but
say
she
it so
actually
much.
did look at peace. And I know it was 9:30 at night, and I remember going into the kitchen and doing some washing. It was a bit
Just to
bizarre,
keep yourself
because
occupied.
I said I'm going to have to start getting used to doing this sort of stuff. I mean, what a strange thing to do. But I think I got some, underwear and stuff like that and just washed it. I mean, odd reaction. But certainly nerves kicked in, because Diane and I, we all slept, Dad, Diane and I, and Auntie Kath for that matter as well, we all slept, we made a big bed up in the living room and slept together. And Diane and I could not stop going to the toilet.
Really?
No, very weird. Kept nipping for a wee. It's nerves.
Like nervous?
It's
Yeah,
nerves.
just
It's
nervous.
nerves. Absolutely
And
nerves.
not knowing
it
what
must
the
have
next
been
journey is.
10 or 12 times we were going. It was ridiculous. Dad got fed up in the end, and he got up and went and got in his own bed. But I mean, it was nerves. Sheer nerves. Yeah.
And do you think that's because you don't know what that next step is? Because how can you ever picture the next step without that person?
Well, exactly. Dad was determined that things should carry on as normal. I was, during that week before the funeral, I had my O-level results to go to, and I remember standing outside school and one of the girls saying to me, she said, "Oh, are you terrified in case your mum kills you at the results?"
Oh.
And I just sort of didn't say anything, because I thought...
She wouldn't have meant it.
Of course she wouldn't.
Yeah.
No. And I did okay in my O-levels. I got 9, I think. But that was irrelevant, really. We went down to stay with Mum's sister in London, and went to the Ideal Homes exhibition, and Dad bought Diana ceramics kit and all sorts of things like that, and it just kept us occupied. And that was which was how it was, I suppose.
Because their granddad he's always a character, isn't he? Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
He's always sort of very vibrant. Was he always like that, granddad?
Yeah, he
Because
was.
the granddad I know
He
was
was.
the colourful shirts and
Yeah,
suits and everything.
he was. I mean, he wasn't good during that period when he was... I remember him crying once when he was doing Mum a meal, and which she couldn't eat, and he scraped it in the bin, and he was crying, and I thought, this is... Oh dear, didn't really know what to do myself, really. But in the September, she died in the August, and in the September I was going to Spain on holiday with my friend and her parents. And Dad took Diane to Austria. Well, you know, just on a few days away, just to keep her occupied. And of course I'm in Spain, and I mean, you know, you can imagine a 16-year-old girl absolutely agog at all the Spanish waiters.
I don't want to know anymore.
No,
I don't think.
I'm not telling you either. But no, it was no. I mean, there was a lot of distraction in that respect to go abroad. I mean, those days, yeah, and in those days at 16, I think I was probably at my prime. I had a
You were fit. Yeah.
I did have a good figure, and I was, for some reason, I was attractive to these people, which was nice.
And you're in the middle of the swinging 60s.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, 71.
Oh, okay. I'll let you have that
71, but yeah, it
That was
still
even worse,
got,
wasn't it, in the 70s?
Probably, yeah. It still got the effect of the 60s. No, it was an innocent fun. We had a great time.
But that gave you your love then, didn't it? For holiday, for being abroad.
For Spain, and so I immediately took up Spanish.
Is that as soon as you got back?
Yeah, I took up Spanish. Yeah.
So by this point then, you know, sort of, you've lost your mum, you know, you're a 16, 17-year-old girl. So then Grandad a year later meets the grandma I know, meets Olive. And he met her in a travel agent.
He did, yeah.
Yeah. Did he own the travel agents, or he?
Well, he did some printing work for this travel agency, and the bloke went bankrupt, and owed him a fortune. And somehow or other, I don't know the details, and we'll never find out now because everybody's passed away. But he ended up taking over the travel agency somehow or other. He bought it, I think, and they did a tour. Olive worked there, and they did a tour to Mallorca, and that following summer I went to work as a courier in Mallorca for 8 weeks. I had the 6 weeks holidays and a couple of weeks either side, and went and worked in Mallorca, which was amazing fun.
I'm so jealous of that, you know. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't regret anything, you know, sort of work-wise, but I wish I'd have been a travel rep. I really do.
That was something else. That was just such a barrel of laughs. I mean, I used to get all the people drunk on champagne as soon as I got them back from the airport, and it was only 10p a bottle. I mean, you know, so that was fine. And then and I just used to say, well, I'm not going to sit at a desk. I'm going to be around the pool all day, every day. Whatever you need, I'll be here. And that's what I did. And every night, everybody used to throw me in the pool, fully clothed. And it was an absolute ball. Really great fun.
If you've ever wondered where I get it from, it's here. How long were you in Mallorca for?
Right, I was in Mallorca when I was 17. And then I came back, did my A-levels, and then I went back and did a little bit more of a stint.
Okay.
Dad and Olive went out to live in Mallorca and bought a restaurant. Diane went with them, but she stayed at home for a while. And I lived with boyfriend's parents for a while, going out with somebody. And then I got involved with horses, and was all about horses.
Why did you get involved with horses? Is it just something from your childhood that you just always liked horses, and then there is a story, I can't remember it, that's what I'm saying. You rode from quite a young age, didn't you?
Yes, I rode from being 9. I was obsessed, and I always said I would have to buy a horse, and I used to try and raise money at home. I had a bring and buy sale once when Mum was at work, and sold all sorts of things. I nearly sold the kitchen table, but I think she would have drawn the line at that. And I had little pots around the house which saying a penny in the box and you'll soon chase the fox. It was ridiculous, trying to get people to pay into my horse fund, but I never raised enough money to buy one. So as soon as I did actually start working, I bought a horse.
Okay. And then that was just that because that snowballed, because you know, when I was born,
Yeah.
you were massively in the throes of horses, and people don't actually understand, I don't think, how much involved with horses we were,
Yeah.
or you were,
Yeah.
you know, to the point where, you know, top riders, champion riders would be coming to you for lessons.
Yeah, I did actually. Yeah, I did actually really get going with that, and got people to Wembley and things like that, and just help train them. Really, I got everything I've done. I've always gone. I can't do it a bit. I have to do it a lot. Unfortunately, it's been what I've done all my life.
I know. You kind of put a bit of that in me, and it's a pain in the backside.
It is. You know, you start a hobby, and the next minute you're running it, or something like that.
Yeah.
What? You know, I just wanted to do this, and then the next minute I'm teaching riding, I'm doing this, and then it's been the same with everything. Everything I've done, it's not just ended up being a hobby for me. I've ended up taking it to the next level, or everything.
You seem to always be remembered, in whatever you've done.
Do I? All right.
Well, it's like whenever we go back to Long Eaton or anything like that.
Yeah, people remember for the horses.
Remember you for the horses.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
your name was quite sort of well known in that
yeah.
circle.
Yeah, I used to find ponies for people and things like that.
But,
yeah.
You know, when you get to this point now, obviously you were working on a farm with the horses, and that's you met my sister first, didn't you? My
Yes.
This is where it gets complicated, but
Yeah,
it's not.
yeah,
You met my
no.
half sister.
I met your half sister when I was teaching, and her mum and dad, your dad, had split up, and Corinne, you know, we made a good bond, and I kind of like really made a fuss of her, and she was drawn to me as well, and we got on so well, and that's how I ended up going out with your dad as a family, and that's how we ended up getting married, actually.
Yeah.
And that's how that all worked.
That
And,
happens. So
And so I married your dad and had you.
Mm-hmm. And what I remember when we was living in Long Eaton, so we lived in Long Eaton, we lived at Draycott Road.
Yeah.
Semi-detached house,
Yeah.
right? I always remember the back garden had sheep in it at some point, or
awesome.
there was always a horse tied up in the back. Right? So anything like that. My dad had birds in the back room as well, because Dad was a bird dealer. I always have to say of the feathery kind. And we had fields up the road. We had 3 big fields, didn't we?
Yeah.
But the house was always full.
People.
Corinne lived with us, didn't she?
Yeah.
But there was it's like I was surrounded by I felt like about a massive team of people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. We did always have a lot of pals there, a lot of girls that used to come and help me with the horses, actually, as much as anything. And a lot of them would come and stay. One or two, one had lost her parents. There was all sorts of different reasons. We had waifs and strays always living there.
That's what I did.
Yeah, that was it. It was just a house and home for waifs and strays that just came and, you know, had beds and...
Felt comfortable.
Yeah,
It felt safe.
Yeah, and we had a ritual. Every time I sold a pony and we got a bit of money, we used to go to...
Little chef.
a little chef and have a beef burger.
With dill sauce.
With dill sauce.
I'll never forget it.
No.
You can never get a burger with dill sauce, but you wouldn't dream
No,
of having a burger with dill sauce. But
I
you know what?
know.
I can taste that.
Oh, it was wonderful.
I can literally taste that burger
Yeah.
with dill sauce.
You've got dill sauce and another sort of sauce. And I used to say, I don't want the other sauce. I'll have
Just
two
want the
dill.
dill
I'll have
ones.
2 dill sauces
Well, I
instead.
remember that as clear.
I know,
as
crazy,
anything.
isn't it? I know.
I
But that
really
was a
do.
ritual.
That was bonkers.
And I never got any money. I never had any money. It was just, everything went into horses, whatever. And it was just like hand to mouth and living off your wits, really.
We used to go pea pod picking when you couldn't afford to get us something to eat. So we used to go pea pod picking and eat the peas.
Yeah, and then go and have strawberries afterwards,
Yeah.
be pudding.
The best of it.
But I used to go and buy some as well. I wasn't just stealing them. I mean,
No, yeah.
but yeah, I mean, and cart vehicles. Oh.
This is where it gets hilarious, right? Is the vehicle side of things with us, right? So I went to this school, Risley Grammar School, right? And Mum was determined that I was going to go to this school because it was a bit posher, right? The best of it was we used to turn it in the horse box, right? And they knew we was always late for school, right? And it didn't matter though, because me marking the register was the horse box backfiring.
It was, yeah.
That's how it worked. You had some right calamities with vehicles and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, previous to that, I had a Mini. I'll never forget this. I had this Mini, I paid 20 quid for it. And I remember it was as rotten as anything. It's got no suspension, its shock absorbers had disappeared or whatever. And I remember opening the door, and it was one of these handles, and the door fell on the pavement. So this is the driver's door, so I ended up getting in, and the lady I was talking to, and we propped the door on, and we got a 6-inch nail and shoved it down the hinge to hold it on. I mean, you can't imagine that these days, can you? And I also used to have a shopping bag in the back to pick up all the bits that had fallen off as I was driving along, because over where we used to live, over a bump in the, some roadworks, like that. And both headlights just jumped straight out like it had lost its eyes. I mean, bits of exhaust were falling off and all the rest of it. You'd never be allowed to drive around in something like that now.
I know.
Crazy vehicles. But it was all I could afford.
Yeah. I feel like I've kind of grown up in a sort of Fawlty Towers, Mr. Bean kind of episodes. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you watch it back and I think, yeah, that was our life.
Do you remember the car that, if it was a bit rainy, I had to take its spark plugs out,
Mum,
put them in the oven.
As clear as anything, right?
And I took them out this particular day. It was chucking it down with rain. I'm fiddling about with late for school yet again, taking these spark plugs out. And he said, "You've not shut the bonnet." And I said, "Well, serve it right if it gets wet."
I remember that as clear as anything. I can remember the way the car was facing everything. I do remember as well, but probably ought to not go into that too much, of you getting me to steer the horse box when I was about 2.5 while you pushed it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it was a massive horse box. A Lamborn. You would be, you'd probably be maybe 2.5. And it was about 100.
If I did that to my children now, you'd go absolutely up the wall. That's the best.
The engine wasn't switched on. You realise that the engine didn't work.
The
engine didn't work. I just sat you there holding onto the steering wheel. Oh, don't let the steering wheel move. And you sat there, and me and Andre were pushing it. It was a massive thing. It was as big as a bus. It's just ridiculous thinking of two females pushing a bus up the road.
And getting a 3-year-old to steer it.
But we managed it.
Brilliant. So, moving on, obviously you and Dad split up, and Chriso came into our life. Chriso is the affectionate name that has just lasted forever. Chriso obviously came into our lives, and sort of that brought a new kind of ray of sunshine with Mark and Joe and everything else. Yeah. And Chris was connected because he was on the police horses.
That's right. Yeah.
And Mark was in the Royal Horse Artillery, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And Jo, she used to ride. So
yeah,
everybody
we
kind of
just
knew
met
each
through
other.
horses. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody knew each other. And it wasn't long after you and Chris are getting married that we moved to the farm. Now, this, I think, needs to be told about, right? Because I get fascinated with this more now because of how old I am to what you did to get that farm.
Yeah.
So bear in mind, we lived in I've just told you, semi-detached house on Draycott Road. We had 3 fields. Yeah. Rented fields and cars that didn't work. Chriso was in the police force. Yeah. Right? And you managed to get us a massive farm in the middle of nowhere, just outside of Monash of Bakewell.
Yeah.
With 16 horses, I think we had.
Yeah.
So we have this farm, right? We turns up, we've got a wheelbarrow, a pitchfork and 16 horses. The biggest big shed, I think, in the whole of Derbyshire. And that was all we had. So just explain, as briefly as you can, how you managed to do that.
Right. Went to a horse show one day and it chucked it down with rain. Oh, boring. So we decided to go and have a look at this barn with 3 acres in over Haddon. And the price guide was 80 to 100,000, which was way out of our price guide, but it was just a curiosity. But while I was there, it showed that there was a farm for sale, part of the whole thing, with 200 acres and a load of milk quota. And for the price guide was 450 to 500,000, and I thought, hang on a minute, just a minute. If I sold the milk, how much is milk quota worth? If I sold off a lot, I don't need 200 acres, but if I sold off most of the land and the milk quota, I could probably afford to buy it. So I went round to all the local farmers that were adjoining.
How old were you then? Just exactly. This is what I like.
I was 35.
You were 35, yeah.
So 5 years younger than you are now. And, 4 years, sorry.
Yeah, wind your neck and you carry on.
Yeah, and...
I'll let that go for a minute.
and anyway, I went and asked if they'd be interested in any land at the right money, £1,800 an acre. Well, yes, most of them were. The thing is, I had this idea, but it was too close to the auction. But I managed to, what I did, I went and found a solicitor in Bakewell so that people felt comfortable that this was a genuine transaction, and got them to sign up to purchasing the land before I bought it. Now, before that, I thought, I'll just go to the bank and see if I can borrow the money, you see. I've got this idea. So I said, can I borrow 500,000? And I said, well, if you put 300,000 in, we'd probably put, you put 200,000 in, we'd probably put 300 in. Okay. So I went back, got my sums together, sold the milk quota on paper, subject to buying it to somebody. And I came up with this thing, I've done it. I've got, these many horses. I've got the house that's worth about £10,000 of equity. That's all there was in it. That's all I've got is £10,000, but I've got sold the milk quota.
I've got potentially
so that from the morning to the afternoon, I went back. I said, right, I've got my 200,000. Where's your 300? Anyway, they agreed to lend it to me, and went to the auction, but it went for a lot more money than anticipated, and I hadn't sold as much land as I needed to. But I thought the idea works. So the people that bought that farm were then selling theirs, which was the one at Arborough. So I went immediately to them, laid it on the line. I said, just give me a map of who owns what land surrounding this, because this is what I'm going to do if I'm interested in buying it. And so I went and visited all the people. I sold, it was 150 acres. I sold 100 acres off, subject to me buying it. All signed up with solicitors, contracts and everything. I sold the milk quota, I got that all sold and everything. And and the bank said, well, of course there's nothing to have to lend you because it will all be paid before you pay for it.
Such a great idea.
So I'm there at the auction and I've got all these contracts, and we just paid, I think we paid 430,000 for it. I mean, I'd got £10,000. Well, I hadn't even got that because I hadn't sold the house. I got nothing. I've got no money. I got a car that was worth about 20 quid.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway, but that was that.
Crazy.
But it worked. They paid their deposits. I sold the milk quota, and on completion, everybody paid for their bit of land. I got a mortgage for we managed to get a mortgage all right for the house and 50 acres that we retained, but a lot cheaper than a house with 50 acres would normally have cost. And all these buildings for, I can't remember how much it ended up with, I don't know.
But a lot less than it should have been.
A lot less, yeah.
And that was in, we moved there in October of
1990.
1990, and that is where the second part of the journey begins.
It is indeed.
Welcome back to Real People, Real Stories, and this is part 2, actually, with my mum, Wendy Watson. We've moved to the second sort of, well, not the second part of the journey. There's been so many parts of your journey already. In the first part, we sort of talked about how you lost your mum when you was 16. Auntie Diane was 12. So the effect that had on you, but you did feel that actually when 16-year-olds, they do sort of spring back a little bit quicker in some respects, and your life took you abroad, and you worked abroad for quite some time, and then horses got involved. Just as a bit of a recap, and you got heavily involved with horses, met my dad, subsequently later on obviously met Chriso, my stepdad, everybody very, very horsey, and ultimately, we got to the point where we were living at the farm, and we heard the bonkers story in the last sort of episode of how you managed to get the farm by selling land off that you didn't even own. beforehand, and that was accepted. It is quite a crazy story, and if you haven't seen it, then you need to watch the first bit. But that was just like the start, again, of another massive chapter of the bonkers life of Wendy Watson. Because you'd already sort of had this kind of roller coaster of you up until the age of 35. You had me when you was 27. So when we moved to the farm, I think did I turn 9? Or I was 8, nearly 9, something like that.
Yeah, it was just before
my birthday.
Just before your 9th birthday, yeah.
I remember that so weirdly as well.
Yeah.
And we moved up to this farm. Now, Arbelo is literally in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, it's probably the highest point around the Money Ash Way, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And on Arbelo, if you don't know it, there's a stone circle.
Yeah.
And the stone circle, the stones are flat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was quite bonkers. We turned us up at this farm, like we said before, with a wheelbarrow, a pitchfork, a car that probably didn't work, and 16 horses.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts?
Like that.
What was going through your head?
Well, I think, first of all, I was kind of like, it's been quite stressful, actually, getting this from idea to reality in a very short space of time, because this is at auction. And once you've bought it at auction, I'd then got to sell my house and get it paid for within 4 weeks.
Wow.
Right? To get the last 10 grand.
Did you have any interest in the house then?
What do you mean?
In the one at Draycott
Oh
Road?
yeah. Well, that
it was mine.
It was mine. Yeah. And we simply had to sell it really quickly and get it completed, which I managed to do. So obviously I had to sell that a bit cheaper to get my 10 grand out of it, because that was part of the money that we were putting towards. I mean, that was the only money that we were putting towards it. Everybody else had to do that.
It's crazy, isn't it, really, when you think
when it was nearly £500,000 this farm. But anyway, I managed to do it. But I mean, so there was quite a bit of, I just had to keep focused, but I'm quite good at that. And I just carry on, and I don't let myself get thwarted in any way. I just think, right, you've got to find a way, you do this, you do that. So what I did is I offered the house a bit cheaper to some people who had got horses who wanted, and they said that they could rent those fields that I'd got a lease on.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
So effectively, it gave them, effectively, they were buying a house for 40k or 30k. Well, I can't remember what it was now, about 30k, and getting 15 acres of land to rent just down the road. So that was the way of doing it.
You are a clever. Sometimes you do put me under a little bit of pressure.
I don't think so.
It is though, and I didn't know that. And I seem to remember that, like, from leaving Draycott Road from the sale to moving in, it was about 8 weeks. Wasn't long.
It was 4 weeks.
Was it actually? Not from moving, not just selling. It was 4 weeks.
No, yeah, we went to auction in.
You were the only woman in the auction room as well, were you not?
Yeah. It went to auction on, I think it was the 12th of September, and the completion date was the 10th of October.
Yeah, and then we moved in that week.
And we had to move in that week.
Incredible.
And that's what happened. So moved in on that time. We had a 4-week period, because that's what you do. You put your deposit in. Of course, the deposit was all paid by people's deposits on the land, plus my milk quota that had already sold prior to us buying it.
Okay. So this is a journey in itself, right? And we get to this farm, and we're in the middle of nowhere, and we've got a stone circle on the land, and then next minute we discover that it really does snow up there. When it snows, and you get stuck.
It did.
So that's, again, part of this journey. And it is almost laughable. It is almost like a comedy series, because, we had lambs that used to follow us about. We used to dress them in baby grows and all that kind of stuff. And I can, you did a lot of the talking, because Chris was obviously still working as a policeman.
He was still in the
So
police,
you were doing a lot of the farming and dealing with the farmers.
Yeah.
And the banter was extreme.
Yeah, it was. It was another part of life.
Yeah.
It was good.
And we adapted to another lifestyle.
Well, we did. And the interesting part was that although horses had been the focus and the rationale for moving, we ended up not having anything much to do with the horses because we got all these massive buildings. And I thought, well, I've got to get some sort of income from somewhere. Why don't I look after other people's cattle? So I didn't do it by halves. I ended up with 300 and something of other people's cattle for the winter. I had no idea.
What were you doing with them beforehand?
Well, blessed if I know.
No,
No, I know where they used to go for the winter before. I don't know. But, I mean, it's been a big milk farm, you see, huge milk farm.
It had the biggest big shed in Derbyshire.
It did. It was enormous. It was something like 200 feet square. It was giant. It was a giant thing. And there were other outbuildings as well. But so I ended up with 300 of other people's cattle. No idea what I'm doing with them, of course. So somebody lent us one tractor. I had to get a scraper tractor, which we bought, to scrape the muck out, and then another tractor which put a spike of baled silage on and dumped that down, and I just learned how to do it, just did it. And
farming just wasn't in our background. It wasn't in Chris's background. It wasn't in yours, really.
No, not at all. No.
It was like the townies meeting the countryside.
Oh yeah.
And then learning, and then. Like, obviously, we became very invested in the village, Monash, because I went to school there. And I always say that school, phenomenal. I became the 39th pupil in the entire school. I was the only girl in my year.
Infants and juniors, that is, as well.
Infants and juniors. Yeah. So, and the Monash soon became a big part of our lives.
Yeah, it did.
And, of course, the pub, the Bull's Head.
Yeah.
And it's a good job it did.
Yeah.
It's a massive good job it did.
Massive, yeah.
I am a massive believer in sort of your life as a journey for you, and it takes you on this, but things are meant to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we used to go into that village pub, you know, it was a family thing. It was like a community centre, but as a pub, and it was brilliant.
Yeah.
I loved that time there. But it was when you were there that you were stood at the bar and someone was looking at you and you thought, who was this? Tell that bit.
Okay, so we were sitting down, Chris and I having a drink. You were outside playing, and then I saw this bloke, and he said to me, "It's Wendy, isn't it?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "It's David. Jennifer's." I said, "Oh gosh, yes." Now, we had my mum's relatives all came from a little village called Bole Hill, near Wirksworth in Derbyshire, and that was my love of stone walls. That's where it came from. As a child, going to Bole Hill, to this little village with crooked cottages that were all higgledy-piggledy, really quaint, really quaint.
Like an Enid Blyton book.
Completely, yeah. And he'd married Jennifer, and he said that, I said, "How is she?" And he said, "Oh, she's had breast cancer twice, once at 32, then at 39.
Just to be clear, so Jennifer is your...
Yeah.
Right, how does that work?
Okay, so Jennifer's mum was my mum's cousin.
Right, first cousin.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Jennifer was they've got two cousins and then with children, right? So I think we're second cousins, something like that. So he said that Jennifer had breast cancer twice and that her cousin had it as well.
And Jennifer she's a little bit older than you, isn't she?
Yeah, she is. She's about maybe 10 years perhaps older than me, something like that.
But she'd have been very young at the time.
Yeah,
of getting breast cancer.
At 32, yeah, 32. Very young.
Yeah, okay.
And I said to David, I said, "Well, did you know that's what my mum died from?" And he said, "No." So we decided that we'd, having come across these long lost relatives I hadn't seen for best part of 20 years, to be fair, and because I'd lost touch with them really, and after Mum died and everything, we didn't carry on going up there or anything like that. You went on your own
different journeys.
Everything was different. Yeah, Dad went to live in Mallorca, you see, and all that. So, we decided to have a bit of a meet up and catch up and actually do a bit of detective work. And this always makes me laugh because, as you know, my name's Watson. And their name's Holmes. So, I mean...
You got the best detectives on the case.
Yeah, absolutely, get the best out. So I decided that we really needed to just see where our families were actually, connected.
What was happening. So you had this meeting that night with David in the pub. you know, and I'm not going to say we went to the pub every night, but we pretty much went to the pub every night. But we went, from when you left the pub, what was your mind saying?
Well,
Were you straight away scared, or were you quizzical?
Immediately I thought, well, all that when I kept going to the doctor and saying, could it be hereditary with mum and grandma? Yeah. Because every time I went about anything, you know, whatever you'd go to the doctor about, I'd sort of throw in the conversation at the end, you know, could breast cancer be hereditary? And each time I was told the same thing. No, definitely not. Yeah, that's just silly. You know, the fact there's been 2 means that it's highly unlikely there'll be a 3rd one, sort of thing. So, so immediately I found out about Jennifer, and knowing that there were going to be others, I felt really panicky for a bit. And we met up, I think, probably the next night, actually. And in fact, discovered there were actually 9 relatives with breast cancer, 9 of them. Jennifer, twice. Her sister had died. Her mum had got it. She'd just developed it at an older age. Her auntie had had it. Her cousin had got it. We found out about yet another cousin or some more distant relative who died in Brighton, and I researched and found her death certificate, and sure enough, she died from breast cancer. That was involved because trying to find somebody that you never knew, and luckily her husband, I knew their name was an unusual name, and I knew that he'd been a college principal, so all I had to do was ring all the colleges and at universities in the Brighton area to find him, and then ask him if he'd contact me and asked him if his wife had died from breast cancer.
How do you do that?
Well, it was weird.
Yeah,
I mean, if it'd been a grocer or something like that, I'd have had no chance. But the fact he was a college principal made it a bit easier, of course, because there was probably only about 10 colleges within an area. But, I mean, he'd retired. I did actually find one, Brighton Technical College, I think it was. And I explained to the lady, I said, you know, the fact that I found out that there's 9 of us with breast cancer, and I just wanted to know if you know, I know she died and she was now buried in Wirksworth Cemetery along with the rest of the family. They brought her back up, but I wondered what she died from, if she died from breast cancer. And of course, they told him, and he rang me back, and I said, the reason that I rang you is in case you've got any children. You know, I mean, it's...
This was after, wasn't it? Wasn't this after your
That wasn't
surgery?
Immediately straight away. It wasn't immediate,
So I
no.
want to go back because you sat with Jennifer at the moment. I mean, that's another, you know, this is the way that this journey goes. It's so intertwined and so...
Yeah, very odd.
There's so much to it. But it's that point, you and Jennifer are sat together and you're putting this together and you're seeing, like, really black dot, black dot, black dot, black dot.
Yeah.
And the only one that's not a black dot really is you.
Yeah.
And Auntie Diane.
Yeah.
So you takes this to the doctor.
Yeah.
At Hartington.
Yeah.
So bear in mind, the doctor's at Hartington. It's like again, like a TV show, isn't it? You know, like whatever that doctor's called, I can't remember now. It is like a show. And you go there, and it's a little quaint little doctor surgery that always had Radio 2 playing on in the background,
That's
right? On the radio. Yeah. And you say to the doctor, "Don't tell me it's not hereditary because I won't believe you."
That's exactly what I said. I'd written it out on the back of a postcard of Arbelo.
Had you really?
I've still got the postcard,
Have
actually.
you?
Yeah, the doctors let me have it, actually. They gave it back to me because it was in my notes, and they gave it me last year.
Fine, that.
Yeah, I'll show it you. And I'd written this family history out, and I said, look, don't tell me this is not hereditary, like all the other GPs over the last 20 years. Because I'll just have to say, I don't believe you. And he agreed it was an appalling family history. I said, what? Right, okay.
Finally.
Finally. Now, what can I do to prevent myself from getting it? And he said, well, we've got to catch it early. And he said, I'll try and get you a mammogram. Unsuccessful, because I was too young at 36 by this time. I was 36. And he said, no, you're too young. It will show up false positives. It might miss them. It'll like be false negatives, false positives, because the breast tissue is too dense for mammography at that stage. So I heard on Jimmy Young programme about tamoxifen. I thought, well, I wonder if that works. You know, can I get on that? And I was deemed too young to be going on that as a prevention.
Have you ever tried tamoxifen as a prevention?
Not at that
before
stage.
then? No. So again, that was just an idea that popped in your head.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so then I thought, well, Diane came to stay and we were out for a walk and I said, you know, I have a good mind to have blooming mastectomy now to start to prevent myself from getting it, you know, and then it can't spread because that's the problem.
You've got to catch it in the breast.
Yeah, it's important to catch it early. Why, if it's so important to catch it early, why don't I catch it before it's happened? And then as soon as I said it, I thought,
Eureka.
that's it. Resolved. Problem solved. And I felt an enormous calm. Didn't feel panicky. I just felt the most amazing calm. I thought, that's it. I've got the solution.
Now, who can I get to do it?
I was overjoyed. Talked about it to Chris, shot off back to Hartington. And I said to him, does breast cancer actually start in the breast? And he said, well, yeah. So I said, okay, so if I have the mastectomy now, before I've got the breast cancer, will that stop me getting it? And he said, well, I suppose if you were able to remove every last cell, then you would be able to remove the risk. But he said, I'll refer. I said, well, will you refer me to somebody? And he referred me to a surgeon in Buxton. I went to meet Mr. England, his name was, and he said, right. He said, you're very unusual, you are, because most ladies I have, they cry and say, please don't take the breast, just take the lump, you know, please preserve my breast. And here's you've not got anything wrong with you, and you're saying, will I take both breasts? And I said, yeah, because it's not a matter of anything wrong with me now, it's a matter of I don't want to go through chemotherapy and have to die. I don't want that.
And for you, it was inevitable that it was going to happen.
Because they were all dying. Grandma died, Mum died. You know, I'd seen it. I'd witnessed this horrible death that they'd had to endure. I'm not saying that that's how it is now. I'm sure treatments, well, I know treatments are much more effective. Yeah. But at the time, it was diabolical. And having been young and very impressionable at that age, you know, I'd do anything to prevent myself from going through that. Again, I was besotted with you for some reason, and
but we had such a strong relationship.
We did. Oh yeah, absolutely, all the time. I mean, you slept with me till you were 6.
All right, we don't need to go that far.
Oh, don't we? All right,
you know
okay.
What I mean? So it's fine.
Yeah.
We can leave that one. So you're there, and you're with this surgeon in Buxton.
Yeah.
It's not like it's a massive city. It's not like it's...
and I just said, well, you know, that's the way that's the way I view it.
That's what I want.
You know, it's the only thing that nobody's come up with any other solution. There's no tablets I can take. Screening doesn't work. Well, you know, I've come up with an idea. And he said, well, okay. He said, there is a family history clinic setting up in Manchester that are crying out for families like yours with large numbers of breast cancers in the aim of finding a gene. And I thought, crikey, this is the first time anybody's admitted that there could be a gene that causes this. And bear in mind, in those days, I'm going back, 30 years now, we weren't gene literate like we are now. People didn't know about genes particularly.
There is, you know, and for anybody who's watching this, there is a film called Decoding Annie Parker. And I always say this because I feel when watching Decoding Annie Parker, when that finishes, yours starts.
Yeah, probably, yes.
It very, very much is.
Yeah.
Because she was working on something in America, which obviously Gareth was very aware of.
Yes.
So, sorry, go back to...
Yes,
you went
she was.
to the family history clinic.
Yeah, so... Anyway, I said, yeah, of course, we'd be delighted to help in any way, shape or form that we can. So he said, okay. He said, well, if they think it's a good idea, I'll do it. So I went to see Gareth Evans, and I kind of had a bizarre view of what a geneticist might be like. And I kind of thought it would be somebody in a office full of dusty books with hair going up like this, like Einstein or something like that. And in actual fact, it was a smart clinic, just a normal clinic with a, young doctor and, fresh-faced doctor, that was very keen and, very accepting.
Gareth wasn't very old then either,
No, he
was
wasn't.
he?
No, he wasn't. He's actually younger than me now. Well, I mean, he was younger than me then,
Yeah,
wasn't he?
yeah,
But
so-
yeah, so he must have only been about 30 maybe at the
That's
age.
quite radical, actually, when you think of
Yeah,
that now.
yeah, must have not been much older than that.
So then there's you two get together, and that's
Yeah.
when it becomes quite a dynamic force.
Mm.
So you say these things to Gareth, and Gareth says what?
Well, he has always said that it was clear that this was somebody that had come up with this conclusion for herself. Nobody was going to change her mind, and it didn't matter what I said. This was where she was focused, and this was what she was going to do. Yeah. And she'd got the whole act together herself. And so he said, how would I feel, though? There was no genetic test available. How would I feel in a couple of years' time if a gene test came up and I was found not to carry the fault? And I said, well, I'd be delighted, because that means I can't pass it on to Becky. And I said, and if I've got the fault, I'll be delighted. I've done what I'm doing. So it's a win-win. There's no downside to that whatsoever.
And you're 36 years old at this
Yeah, I was 36, yeah. And he said, well, if you can view it like that. I said, yeah, of course. I said, that's, to me, it's all positive. I said, I can't wait.
Yeah.
I can't wait. I've had this threat hanging over me since I've been 16. All right, it's not completely taken over my life because I've had a busy life and, doing things.
You probably got more busier because of that.
Well,
Do you think
maybe
I've got to fit all this in?
Well, I don't know about that, but I think I just like living life, and just did so many things, I was theatre, I was doing all sorts of singing, you name it, I was doing it. My life was totally full, and of course you, and so yeah, he said, well, that's fine, I'll write to the surgeon. And I sat outside and I overheard him say, with her family history, quite honestly, I don't blame her. And so I thought,
You've got someone on your side.
That'll do me.
Did you feel like you got someone?
Okay, definitely, but 100%, because he talked to me like I was not not some
neurotic female.
Yeah, neurotic and crazy. I was just, full of common sense in my mind. This is the problem. Where's the answer? Yeah. Like when I wanted a farm, this is, you have to find an answer, don't you, to all these
problem
these things. You have to find a way of doing it. And so I went back to see the surgeon, and he wrote this referral. And when I got back to see Mr. England, he said, right, well, they're coming off then, are they? And I thought, well, there you go, that's a bit of attitude. I said, yeah. I said, so he said, right, okay, when would you like it doing? So I said, well, the cows go out at the beginning of April, but we've got to start silaging in June. So sort of middle to the end of April would be perfect. Well, he just chucked his pen down like that, and he says, well, I've heard it all now. He says, you come in here. He said, you want your breast removed. He says, and then you've got me scheduling an operation round a herd of cows. Well, and we did have a laugh.
Brilliant.
And
brilliant. I think he'd probably got to that point where it was just like, this is quite comical. But he's going to see this somewhere, and and
in the
it's going to be
future.
Big. Yeah.
Yeah, in the future.
Go with the ride, sort of thing.
And
so how many weeks later did you have? How long was that? Have you had the help?
That was, so I had the operation on the 21st of April.
Which is probably my little boy's birthday.
Exactly, and little boy was born on my 25th anniversary.
Incredible.
Of having
the
I know. No, it could be crying now.
I know,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, quite emotional, that, really.
That will always be a poignant thing.
Yeah, massive.
And also, the other story with Bobby is that I didn't think we were going to have him because of because of hysterectomies, etc. Wow, wow.
Yeah. So anyway,
so you came up with this idea. They said yes, it's going to happen. How many weeks did you have to literally sort of tell people about it? To get to terms with it in your mind? How did the family react?
Well, the family, because I just told people as it was, quite logically.
You were very straight with it, weren't you?
I never beat about the bush with anybody. I just, I've come up with this idea. And initially, unless you got time to actually tell people the family history, they couldn't get it. No. The family got it because they knew the family history. But friends were, God, isn't that a bit drastic? And that was the stock phrase that everybody used. So in the end, I ended up protecting other people. And I said, well, I'm going into hospital to have the bit out where breast cancer starts.
Simple. But they didn't.
The fact that it's the whole blooming lot. Yeah. But I wasn't telling any untruths. But it was easier for them because they couldn't cope with it. I was coping with it. It was everybody else that wasn't.
Yeah. And that's it's an interesting theory, that is, because I think that's sort of probably why that leads on to why you did what you did with the helpline.
Yeah,
and stuff.
Maybe. Yeah.
It is interesting. Like, you know, you couldn't have reconstruction either. That was not available at that time.
No, not immediate reconstruction.
And
no.
Also, the big point was that you convinced these surgeons to take healthy breasts. They'd never done it before. No. Never, ever done it before. The concept was crazy. Yeah. They were sort of kind of thinking, if she changed their mind and regrets this, we were kind of in a suing, you know, sort of lifestyle by then, because that's what was happening in America all the time. Yeah. So by saying that you might want reconstruction made them think that you might have doubted it.
Well, yeah, I was concerned. You know, I know we were living in a very litigious, you know, lots of litigation going on society, and I didn't want to put them off in any way, shape or form. So what I did was I just said, well, you know, I'm quite happy, you know, just put them away. And if there's reconstruction available at a later date, fair enough, we'll talk about it. But my priority is to get rid of this. I suppose it's a cliche, ticking time bombs, but that's really what they were.
That's what it felt.
And I said, you know, I'm quite happy. I'm quite sanguine about it all. You know, you would actually, by refusing to do this, you would be sentencing me to death, in my mind.
That's what you
Simple as that. And that gave them the confidence to do it. But they kept me in hospital, interestingly. It's only a couple of days now, but in that time, they kept me in for 10 days.
You did. One of my biggest memories, because I know I wanted to come and see you when you came out of your operation, but I didn't, because you didn't want me to, because you didn't want me to see you. You didn't know how you were going to be.
No idea.
Sort of coming round from the anaesthetic. That's always been the bit that scares you the most. And I remember Chriso going over, and it's quite late at night, and that day, I'd managed to con Chriso into buying me some Doc Martin boots.
Yeah, you had,
because you didn't want to buy me any, right? And Chriso was just like, oh, yeah, let's go get you some boots. And I was thinking, well, I know Mum's going to be all right, so I'll just enjoy my boots. I remember that moment. I remember coming to see you, I think it was the next day, and you were so smiley.
Yeah.
You were so smiley. Yeah. And I don't think you showed me then, because you were quite aware of it. I do remember you being aware of me being aware of what it was going to look like, because we did. Yeah. I always used to get in bed with you. You know. Yeah. Okay, I did it till I was quite old. You know, snuggle up in the morning. But you knew that there was going to be a difference, and that I'd noticed it, because I was 10 then.
Yeah, you would be 10.
Yeah. So I wasn't at that age where you don't sort of recognise things. I very much did.
Yeah. It's. I think I obviously through all these weeks of preparing to go in, I mean, I had obviously in the back of my mind, am I going to survive the anaesthetic? Because I think everybody, without exception, thinks, will you survive an anaesthetic?
Well, I did now because of you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. You know, but I mean, I don't mean I dwelt on it. I didn't say anything to anybody else, but that was my only fear. But when, of course, I'd survived the anaesthetic, came round, I was absolutely as high as a kite. Yeah. I was over the moon. You know,
weight lifted,
brilliant,
on.
gamble over. And, you know, Lindsay came, she worked for Gareth. Lindsay came over a couple of days later to tell me they'd analysed all the breast tissue, no cancer in it, you know, and it was like, you know, this is so joyous. Yeah. And I was over the moon, to be honest. And, yeah, loving everything about life. Suddenly, everything was hilarious. My 10 days in hospital were an absolute ball.
Even though, I mean, you know, of course, there was the sort of element of the people that were surrounding you were waiting for diagnosis, prognosis, sort of what was going to happen next.
Totally, yeah.
But you didn't.
I hadn't got any of that.
Just the case of, wait till these drains have gone. Yeah. I go home, that's it.
Exactly. I mean, just looking around, 29 other people, all who were waiting to find out their prognosis. Yeah. You know, it's just...
You just felt lucky, didn't
Yeah,
you, in
oh,
comparison?
God, yeah. I mean, the most privileged person in the world is an expression I've used many times, and I did feel the most privileged person ever. And I was just overjoyed. And I wanted to find out then, while this is going on, Gareth's in touch with all the relatives, getting blood samples and so on, to start looking to see if they can find any comparison on what was known as chromosome 17 to try and find this gene, because they'd already narrowed it down to chromosome 17. And so they were trying to match up everybody's chromosomes who'd had breast cancer. And even getting a tissue sample from a mum who died 20 years previously.
How do they do that?
And they'd even knocked that hospital down. That hospital
they got
didn't...
a tissue sample
Yeah.
from your mum that had died 20 years earlier.
Yeah, in a hospital that no longer existed.
It's quite incredible, isn't it, really?
Isn't it? Yeah.
And that is like a big sort of statement. And it is fair to say a massive, massive move in finding the BRCA gene.
Oh, gosh, yeah. There were 5 families in the UK that all fed into this project that Gareth was doing. And so that the idea is to find the part on chromosome 17 where they'd all got exactly the same match. And that would help. That would help find where the gene was. Mm-hmm. And then
you could locate it.
And then once you've found the gene, then you can look for mistakes, if you like, spelling mistakes within the gene. Yeah. But I mean, first of all, you've got to locate the gene. There are other ways of doing genetic testing in just comparing whether you've inherited that copy of the chromosome or not. Yeah. But to actually find the spelling mistake is the key.
Is the key
thing. Yeah.
And really, we could go into that so much because it's so in depth. And there's so much to that, which we will touch on at some point. We just want to carry on with the story of how things progressed from there.
Me,
Gareth was like, he is incredible. But putting you two together, it was like, so the brains behind the brawn in a way, or but both of you it was.
Yeah, I think we just hit it off really, and had a lot to do with him over. Keep going, and one thing or other, I was the first person, or we think I was the first anyway, we're not sure.
To have the preventative mastectomy.
Yeah, and he'd had to kind of... And then, of course, I started to learn more about it, and I realised that ours wasn't the only family. And then I thought, well, I'd been so doubted by everybody, and it was only because I managed to find there were 9 relatives that anybody took me seriously.
And you're strong.
Yeah. And
you're quite strong-willed.
Yeah, I'm not going to take no... I'm going to go forward. If something's right, I'll carry on with it. And so I learned about genetics. Gareth gave me some modules from... teaching modules for students. And I say once I'd found out how many there really was, one in 800 people have a BRCA1 fault, 1 in 800 people have a BRCA2 fault. Then there are the same amount again of unknown genes. So it's like 1 in 200 people have a high-risk gene. Now that's not that rare. No. So I thought, well, people need to know. So
because doctors wouldn't believe it, would they?
No, they were still saying,
90s.
No, there's no such thing. So I thought, right, okay. So I did. I got in touch with the Independent. So I thought that's a very sensible newspaper, and a lady came out and interviewed me, and there was a piece went in, very factual piece, just very factual, not emotional, not a magazine story, just a factual piece.
What you wanted,
absolutely what I wanted.
You didn't want "Oh woe is me" or anything.
No,
like that.
Well, it wasn't.
Exactly.
It was, and I didn't make it out "Oh glory be." It was just these are the facts. This is what I've done, and this is an opportunity. This is an option that's available.
To know about this.
Yeah, this is an option that I took, and at that stage I wasn't promoting it for anybody else, but I just thought people ought to know about it. Well, the minute that came out, the phones, everything went crazy.
It genuinely exploded.
It really was bonkers. That was. There was like a bidding war for my story through all the magazines, you know, even Woman's Weekly was bidding, and people couldn't believe that Woman's Weekly wanted it, you know.
Crazy.
And
It was the Big Breakfast I always remember.
Yeah.
Because that was massive at the time.
It was huge.
With Chris and Zoe, and like everyone at school was talking about it, and I remember them being on the phone. You had no clue who they were, and I was going, you've got to do it.
Yeah. So we went on the Big Breakfast. Now that was really funny because Gabby Roslin said, well, we've been in touch with the Royal Hospital and they say there's no evidence to suggest there's any genes that cause breast cancer. So I said, who did you talk to? The cleaner?
Yeah.
Well, all the camera crew.
that.
Yeah, the camera crew were falling apart with laughter. I mean, literally falling apart. It was very funny.
I wish we could get that.
I
back,
know.
'cause the Big Breakfast at the time
It was big.
the biggest
Yeah,
show.
it wasn't recorded or anything, but a lot of these things I haven't got on record. But yeah, I mean, you know, what, you know. Anyway,
You're 36, 37 years old then. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm, you know, approaching the late 30s. I look now and I think, that's me. That's like me pioneering this a couple of years ago.
yeah,
Crikey.
yeah.
So from that, it just snowballed and snowballed and snowballed, didn't it?
Well, yeah.
But then you've got a lot of, you've got people that were straight away sort of saying that you were being ridiculous.
There were all sorts of things, but various different opinions came out. But the magazine that wrote the most silliest story, ridiculous, about me sitting, my tears matching the dripping rain on the windows. Oh, I thought I'm not. I wanted
You were
to.
furious.
I was very furious. I can tell you. But anyway. I agreed. Gareth had got somebody wanting to make a television programme, a documentary called The Decision. And he said, you can meet the lady and, you know, make sure that you're comfortable with it. And I said, yeah, okay. So I met Sally Dixon, who produced it, and got on with her really well. And I felt that she did get me, you know, that she wasn't out to do anything.
The whole sombre thing.
No, it was all as is. You know, it was a series of programmes about people having to make life-changing decisions, life-saving, life-changing. There was somebody who'd got to donate kidneys and all sorts of things like that. It was a 6-part series, and I agreed to do it. And so when that was aired in 1996...
Was it 96?
Yes, it was February of 1996. A couple of days later, I got a letter through the post from a girl called Andrea. And she said, Dear Mrs. Watson, I hope you can understand. At last I feel that there's somebody who understands how I feel. My mum and grandma both died in their 20s from breast cancer. And in fact, 3 generations all died before their 30s. And I've got a little girl of 2.5 and a little boy of 1. And the thought of yet another generation growing up without a mother has always filled me with terror. I know. And she said, but the clinic that we're under won't hear of it and think it's a ridiculous idea. So immediately I rang her up. And it was like talking to myself because she was just exactly as I am. She was 25, her sister was 27, and they really wanted this surgery, but nobody would do it. So I said, well, look, I'll give this professor a ring and, you know, give him an idea on how liberated it's made my, you know, it's altered my life.
I think you might have some kind of rationale.
Yeah, I thought that. So I rang Professor Blamey up, and he said, my dear, just because you've been on television, does that mean you think you know more about my job than I do? I said, well, hang on a minute. This has nothing to do with jobs or televisions. I was just trying to give you the patient perspective on how I feel and how Andrea and Rhonda must obviously feel because they've written to me. And he said, oh, you should be running my clinic for me. And I thought, I nearly thought, well, that wouldn't be a bad idea. But anyway, I didn't say that. I just said, well, okay, you know, I just wanted you to know this is what I felt. So I thought, well, he's absolutely no help whatsoever, is he? So I thought, well, I told them that I'd not got anywhere, but I said, I'll sort something out for you. And I thought, well, I wonder if I can get them to Manchester. So I got in touch with Gareth, and he said, well, you know, it'd have to be done privately. No, that's right. No, I said we could do a referral from Nottingham. So he said, yeah, we could do it. If Nottingham will refer to there. Anyway, they were over the moon that I managed to get them a referral to Manchester. And about 2 weeks later, I get a distraught Andrea on the phone in absolute floods of tears. Professor Blamey had blocked the referral, and he'd blocked the health authority from paying for it. So I said, well, don't worry, I'll sort it out. I mean...
You didn't have a clue how you were going to do it?
No, but I knew I would. I just knew I would, because I do. You know, that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm in this earth for, to sort things out. And so I thought, well, what's the problem? Manchester will have them. That's fine. Okay, next thing is, it's the money. How am I going to raise the money? I know what I can do. I can sing. I'll get a record, I'll get a song, I'll record it, and on the back of their story, and I'll raise the money that way. So I wrote to EMI, and I got a song from EMI, and it was rewritten, called Where Do I Go From Here? I recorded it. I sent it to W.H. Smith with the story of Andrea and Rhonda and what it was going to be about, what the money was for, why, and all the rest of it. I knew it was a Smiths type of song. And I got a phone call and said, yeah, we'd like to take it. We'll have 3,000 CDs and 2,000 cassettes. And at this time, I've got no record company or anything.
No, I was going to say, we just bought out the shop then, hadn't we?
Yeah.
So we've got a shop and a post office in Bakewell, right? This is ridiculous. So what did you do?
Well, I set up my own record company.
Because that's what
I thought,
you
well,
did.
there's no point. Why do I
Why
need a
not?
record company? I don't need one, do I? Because the record company's there to sell the record. Well, I've already done it. I've already done it. I've sold it to W.H. Smith. HMV bought it on the basis that Smiths had got it. And that was it. There was the 10 grand, you see.
And you put the posters up everywhere. Then you made Hereditary Breast Cancer Awareness Week, which had never happened before because obviously no one knew hereditary breast cancer existed. This is just what you do.
Well, look, let's be fair, right? I've sold this record to W.H. Smith and HMV on the back of a big story, so I've got to now promote the story. What better way of promoting the story than by holding a Hereditary Breast Cancer Awareness Week? But what do I need to do to hold an awareness week? Well, you just have one. You just do it. You don't have to. There's not a register or a log of them. You just have one.
There certainly wasn't then, anyway.
No. So I thought, well, I need somebody high up. So I wrote to Diana, Princess Diana, and she wrote me the most amazing letter back saying that it was really a privilege, and she'd got the greatest admiration for people who could, you know, having taken life into their own hands and carry on doing things for others. And beautiful, quite a bit of it handwritten as well, which obviously I treasure that letter. And so it gave her she wanted to support the Awareness Week. So it just took off. And so that's it. We had a Hereditary Breast Cancer Awareness Week. I even had Watchdog get in touch with me. Can you remember Watchdog Health Check?
Yeah,
anyway,
I do.
They got in touch and said that, did I know it was Hereditary Breast Cancer Awareness Week coming up? And I said, yeah, I had heard about it.
This is brilliant.
So they said, well, we'd like to do a little piece, film with you, because you were one of the first to have surgery. And I said, well, you have to promote my record. And they said, well, we don't do that on Health Check. And I said, well, I'm not doing it then. Because, so this is all part of the story, you see. And so they agreed to do it. So they did a still at the end and promoted the record. And
but that instilled so much more publicity. It was just
it was just
ongoing.
it was just creating the publicity, creating
like a
something
machine.
else to do something else, and of course it all filed into this 1 week, and it was balmy that week. I mean, I was down in London running from one TV station to another and radios and everything else, and it was madness,
It
really.
was. And you all the time that we still had the farm, because we'd sold the farm land off by then. We just kept the farmhouse, didn't we? But you got a general store and post office
Yeah.
that you were running. You and Chris was still working.
Yeah,
Chris
yeah.
was still, in the
Yeah.
police force and everything else. So it was just a manic time.
Yeah.
But so, when you're going through it, you don't realise how groundbreaking it is. Yeah, and this is what I mean, like, sort of, obviously I've grown up with this. This has just been
Yeah.
what life is. But when I talk about it now and I look back and I think, crikey, that's bonkers. Because I was at that age of sort of going, oh, what's my mum doing next? Oh, crap, what's she doing? Oh, no. Right, but it is amazing. And from that awareness was when people realised, well, the call was made, wasn't it, from the Minister for Women's Health?
Well, what happened actually is Gareth said to me, he said, Wendy, he said, you've done a ridiculously phenomenal job of raising awareness, awareness weeks, records, you name it, you've done all this lot, we've got the, TV programmes. He said, but the genetic clinics, we're swamped with people wanting appointments. We've got no funding. Our health bodies aren't paying for people to have appointments or anything like that. So we're having to use our research money to fund these, these appointments for people. So I said, well, that's ridiculous. So I did a cost-benefit analysis of funding genetic services. And I did it based on how much it costs to treat breast cancer. Either just the lumpectomy or to have, or through to death, because, so many people at that stage died. And how much it cost to actually do the surgery that I'd had as a prevention, and or just the test to say that you didn't need the surgery or whatever. And in our family alone, just with the 4 surgeries that had been by that stage, or 4 genetic tests, I should say, by that stage, we'd saved the NHS £66,000. Now, going back 25 years ago, that's a lot of money, £66,000. Just in. So I sent these figures by my MP to the Health Minister and appealed that they should look at funding genetic services, because really, it was cost effective to the NHS. And I got a phone call and an invite to go down to London to meet Baroness Cumberledge. And her interview is on my website. And she was a delightful lady, absolutely lovely. And she said such nice things about me, And she said that she thought that I would push this whole area forward in a way perhaps that the professionals can't. And so I thought, well, I've got to live up to that. And she gave genetic services specialist commissioning, which meant that it was top sliced, so that anybody that needed to have a genetic appointment, it's funded centrally, not at the whim of the local health authority.
It is a thing that is
it's
needed.
Yeah, it's there, it's at the top, and so your doctor doesn't have to apply to the health authority in the area, can I refer this person? They just can't, that's
and you
it.
did that?
Well, I suppose so. But, yeah, I mean, I had to, didn't I? Somebody'd got to do it. And then after that, she also asked me if I'd set up a helpline for people. She said, because I think it's enormously important for women to be able to talk to somebody who've been through what you've been through. And, it makes such a difference to people. I can't remember her exact words, but they are on the website. But she was so nice with it. And so I said, yeah, of course I will. And so I got a grant to set up the helpline, a very small grant. And so this is all in 1996. This started from the showing of the decision programme in the February, and by the September, we'd gone through awareness weeks, helpline, genetic services, and we've got a helpline starting.
And thus the helpline is born.
And thus the helpline was born, and that was in August, September of 1996.
Welcome back to Meas-Maz TV, real life, real stories. This is part 3 now with my mum, Wendy Watson. And the journey that we've taken so far, I mean, obviously I've lived through this, but even listening to it back, and hopefully you watch part 2 and part 1, and you'll see that you think, there's more? How can there be more? And I really think now we've only just scratched the surface.
Yes, that's
and
true.
That includes preventive mastectomies, farms, it includes Awareness Week, the first ever Awareness Week, releasing records, it includes then setting up a helpline. You think, there can't be any more. Oh, but there is. So we left it last time that the Minister for Women's Health had asked you to set up this helpline.
Yeah.
So how do you go about setting up a helpline?
Well, I just rang BT and got a number, fantastic number, 01629 813,000. Brilliant, perfect number.
Okay.
And just did a lot of publicity again in the newspapers. By this time I've got an awful lot of contacts from stuff that I've done, and everybody was really keen to do something about this. You know, it was very easy. You could springboard from the Derbyshire Times, they followed me avidly, and that to all the national papers did things all the time.
Well, they were a bit like, what is this woman
well,
going to do
exactly,
next?
yes, exactly. And people started to ring the helpline. I sent leaflets round to all the doctors' surgeries with the details on of the helpline and what it was about, all backed up with Gareth and Ros Eales, who were our advisors at the time. So we sent...
that's how it went.
Yeah.
It was like a tree.
Yeah.
And that you were there to answer the helpline to offer peer support.
Yes.
Not medical advice.
No,
it was sort of like, we can relate to you because, you know, I've been in that situation. And then any medical advice would go to Gareth and...
Yeah. They supported me with advice to give to people. And, or to signpost them in the right direction.
And this was ran from the home as well?
It was ran from...
You weren't made to be going in an office?
No, I just ran it from home. I'd got £10,000 a year to do it, which was fine. So I started off with running this helpline, and it got quite busy, and all the genetic services had the number. We got leaflets printed, and they went to all the genetic services, and we told doctors' surgeries about it, and various, you know, just newspapers and magazine articles, lots of magazine articles, to be honest.
And it's worth pointing out, it was and possibly is the only one of its kind, not just in Europe, at that point in the world.
Yeah, at that point it was, and I was doing talks. I did a series of talks in Europe, Frankfurt, Heidelberg, Marseille, Barcelona, London. On I was invited to talk on the aspect, the patient perspective of genetic testing. And funnily enough, I even got to chair a meeting for the Royal Society in London. Now, when I was asked the Royal Society of what, I said, well, I don't know actually. They just said the Royal Society, and I didn't really think about it. And apparently, it is the most august body in the world, practically, the Royal Society. And I chaired a session for them in Westminster, which was good.
What do you mean by that?
Well, they had various sessions on discussion and debate over genetic testing for breast cancer, the things it threw up, whether it's a good thing, whether people can handle the answer, and this, that and the other. And I was there to chair various sessions. Because,
answering it from the patient's perspective.
Well, no, I wasn't answering it at all. I was the chair.
Wow.
I was the chair because they knew I would keep it equally framed, that, you know, I could see both sides of all this and never, and don't put my opinion. You can only say how it was for me, but you also have to temper that with how it is for other people.
Because not everybody has
no,
the
absolutely. So you've got to just know that that's what you can do. So that's what I did. I did lots of things like that, which made more awareness, and nationally, internationally. Japan came over, and I had to set up a website for them. Well, I'm the most untechnological person. Can you imagine?
I didn't know any of this.
Oh, yeah, it was hilarious, that was. And the thing is,
to set up a website for someone in Japan.
yeah, they came over from Japan.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah,
Right,
I know. Well, I didn't actually do that, but they focused on me, me running the helpline, and it was about them setting a website up, but it was for me to say what they needed on the website. Anyway, I mean, I didn't do the technical bit at all,
totally.
but what we spent most of our time doing was bowing, because I didn't realise the Japanese, they can't go out the house until they've been the last person to do that, and I kept doing it. So every time they came in with the equipment and that, it was like, oh, mate. It was great fun. And as well, Andrea and Rhonda, who'd springboarded all this, the two girls,
So
the two young girls,
didn't
they had their operation, which obviously got funded by the Record and one thing and another. And they, Australian TV, something called 60 Minutes in Australia.
Yeah, I think it's still there.
Yeah, they came over several times to film me and my story, because they'd seen the decision, and then they followed Andrea and Rhonda as well, so that was nice. Yeah. And I actually had to do the soundtrack through it, and they took me to London, and I recorded Smile.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Why
recorded
did I not
Smile.
know that?
And that was played all the way through. Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah.
You don't care, do you? You're just getting on with life. And so that was really quite nice. And so that was going on. The helpline got busy. Yeah, I got invited to loads and loads of conferences to talk. Loads and loads. There was something happening every week or every month that I was going to London to talk to somewhere else. And Gareth got me involved with training sessions at Now Gen, which was training. It was just part of a course that people could go on, like doctors who were going to go into genetic counselling at a more local level.
Right, because by that point, it had been recognised.
Oh, yeah,
point,
it's all
these other facts that you
genes have been found, we'd all had tests, it was...
And that this was all happening. So from this little piece which we need to find, the postcard with the family history on, thus is born all these training sessions, and this happening, and a helpline running, and your strapline with the helpline was, everyone deserves to have all the information.
And full support, no matter what the choice.
And that's what you've always stood
That
by.
was on my record, that provided people had got all the information, it was their choice. It was not mine, not the doctors. It was their choice, and they should have full support, no matter what they choose.
Exactly.
And I still stick by that now.
It's right.
Well, it is right.
It's
right.
like opinions are like bottoms. Everyone's got one.
Yeah, it's just, what might be right for somebody is certainly not right for other people. But unless they actually know that they need the full facts, the ups and downs and pros and cons of everything. So I've been running for a year, and in 1997, suddenly I get a contact from somebody, and I know that there was a move to change the law in Europe to make genes patentable.
This is where it goes really crazy, right? And I know you don't think it can get much more, but it does. So to anybody else, patentable, whatever, I can't even say it, but what does it mean?
Well, I couldn't get it. I said, how can you patent a gene? And they said, well, there is a move to change the law to make genes a patentable commodity.
Which would mean
that Myriad Genetics had already got a patent. I knew this. They had a patent in America, which I'd already expressed a very strange opinion on it, a quizzical opinion on how anybody could patent a gene. But realistically, I didn't feel I could take on America particularly. Well, what they did, didn't they? And that was that. Although I did say my piece about it.
And your piece was, because I want to make this really clear of what it means, is that by patenting that gene meant that nobody else could work on it. So it was up to them as to how things progressed. So they then owned it, so there wasn't much room for manoeuvre.
So let's give you an example. In America, Myriad Genetics had the patent. I'd already got the patent on the BRCA1 and BRCA2 genes. They'd got it. Right, so in America, they were the only people that could do the test, and their test was $2,500 for a test that cost us, as I'd worked out, £500.
And that was
at
our
that
NHS.
stage on our NHS.
Yeah.
The panic that came to me straight away then was, good gracious, if my figures that have been based on £500 suddenly are escalated to $2,500,
They'll pull it.
then there's no way the NHS could afford it. It'd be prohibitively expensive. So I then wrote to all the broadsheets and Tony Blair, and because he was Prime Minister then, and I said, you know, and all the ministers as well, and I said, did you know there's a move to change the law in Europe, a directive going through the European Parliament to change the law to make genes a patentable commodity? Just realise what this will happen just simply to the breast cancer gene. It costs 2.5. Myriad Genetics will be able to extend their patent into Europe, and then we will only be able to be tested by Myriad at £2,500 a time, $2,500 a time. Sorry, the NHS won't be able to afford it, and that's just one gene out of loads. And the next news, I'm on the front page of all the broadsheets. Wendy Watson spearheading the campaign against the Gene Patent Directive, and I thought, what? No, a minute, I'm not doing that. I want you to, I'm telling you so that you can investigate this and take it on, because it's not my job. I don't know how to do this. You know, you've got the wherewithal. But no, next news, that's it. I'm spearheading the campaign. You want to read some of the stuff, it's unbelievable. And also, the Today programme rang me up, and I just said, well, you know, I can't see that this is sensible. Tony Blair and the ministers just wrote back and said, yeah, we're keeping our eye on it. Well, that's no good, is it?
Not going to do anything, is it?
In actual fact, what had happened, the directive said that it said a gene is not patentable. Notwithstanding that, an element isolated from the human body by means of a technical procedure, including a gene or partial gene sequence, may be patentable. Right? Now, that was to hoodwink people, to make them believe that it was the technical procedure. But read it again, and it actually means that the gene or the gene sequence, the partial, is patentable. So I rang the European Patent Office and the UK Patent Office, and I said, look, if this directive goes through in the European Parliament in whatever month it was, can't remember now, July I think, so if this directive is adopted, does that mean that genes will be patentable? And they said, yes, it does. So I'd got the evidence then. So I said, right, okay, thank you for being straight with me now. So I then decided to go over to the European Patent, no, not the European Parliament, sorry, the European Parliament, and go and visit some MEPs and try and explain to them what they were voting for. Now, of course, there was a massive other lobby that was going on, organised by a patient umbrella group that the gentleman was working with SmithKline Beecham to it's all on Wikipedia, it's all, you can find it on the internet, and it was the biggest lobby the European Parliament had ever seen. And what they did is they got all these people in wheelchairs and flew them out to the holiday hotel in Strasbourg and in Brussels to lobby the MEPs on the day of the vote to say that if you don't vote, you know, patents are for life, and if you don't vote for this directive, you're subjecting me and my family to this, because the pharmaceutical industry won't put any money into more research. But the actual opposite is true. If there was a patent on the gene, it would mean that the pharmaceutical industry would just sit there on rare gene disorders. They're not going to put millions of pounds into that. Just sit there and wait for a university to come up with a cure or something using that gene. We've got a flag, you know, put the flag in this gene and say, that's my gene. We need this much royalties and this much licence fees.
This is just my, you know, I'm following you, and I even followed you at the time. Do you know what I mean? It's mind blowing with no training in medical, you know, or anything, or war, or anything like that.
I know. Well, let's face it, I had been in touch with Gareth, obviously, and the British Society for Human Genetics and all the other societies. And I said, you know, what do you think to this? I don't want to go, I'm now stuck with this position of being spearheading this campaign. I've got to do something. But, you know, I want your opinion. I need your back. And they all wrote and said, yeah, of course. I mean, we don't want patenting it. You know, Gareth wrote a fabulous letter about, you know, how it would stifle research, not engender research. It would stifle it. Because with a patent in a gene, there's no point in putting venture capital into it unless it was the ageing gene or, you know, something like that. Then, of course, venture capital. But if you just were going to limit it to, like, genes that were fairly rare and that were disorders and a lot of money to put into, probably not a big return. So, you know, better to just wait for a university to come up with something and then charge you licence fees. Anyway, so I ended up going over to the European Parliament and I'm battling against a £30 million lobby.
And at this point, I need to just say, because this is one bit I do remember. I remember that you thought the phone's being tapped.
I did.
Right? And you getting me and running me to the car, right? And us driving out the village. Because you literally were scared. You were scared because you knew what you were up against.
I did, actually.
And you felt that if you did win, this would mean that they would lose so much money. So therefore,
I think I got a bit of an overactive imagination over all this, but I mean, I do think everything all the way through, perhaps a lot further than you need to. But I mean, it's how I'd survived, isn't it? Let's face it. You know, thinking things through is, you know, to the nth degree. You're prepared before you start. So I changed the phone so that we'd got digital. So that was that. But my phone, I mean, there was always men up my phone thing. And
your phone thing.
You know, telegraph pole.
Be careful what you say then.
Telegraph pole, that, you know, for no reason.
And it made you
yeah,
nervous.
it did make me nervous. I'm not going to accuse anybody of anything like that, but I did get a bit wary because, let's face it, this was billions of pounds.
This is one woman in one little sleepy village.
I know.
Just
I know.
outside of Bangkok.
Weird, really.
It is.
Yeah, I suppose.
It's amazing.
Well, yeah. I mean, when I found out later that I'm a teaching course at Princeton University. What? Wendy Watson versus Myriad Genetics in the something science and technology, a round table discussion teaching course. I mean, that's crackers, isn't it?
And then we met somebody that was at a charity board that when she studied you at uni, and I was like, what?
Oh, no, very odd. But anyway, there you go.
Right, so, yeah.
Yeah, so I wasn't successful in stopping the law being changed. So the law did get changed, but I had made a lot of noise about it all. A lot of noise, and so things weren't going quite as smoothly as they might. But I also challenged Myriad. Myriad immediately put in a patent application, as I knew they would, for the BRCA1 gene. And but I challenged it and also got in touch with a company in Denmark that had found a mistake in their application on one of the faults. And so they challenged it on that. And I challenged it on the fourth part of patent law, which is it must not be contrary to public morality. Now, I challenged it on the fact that it would be because it would make genetic testing prohibitively expensive for the NHS and would cost lives. So between us, we got the patent stopped. So that's really good. I'm pleased about that.
It's incredible.
Yeah,
really.
that's something that it's not a subject that many people want to listen to because it's
hard to follow and it's hard to understand.
Yeah.
But the be all and end all of it is that you decided that this wasn't right because it would threaten lives and it would threaten our NHS and things wouldn't be able to move forward as quickly as what they have done.
No.
But instead of sort of going, but it's not, I can't do it. No, you just do. And you went. And so many people have said in the press, like, you're a bit of an Erin Brockovich. I don't think there's a lot of Erin Brockovich right there, to be fair. And to win it and to have that effect so that now, again, the NHS has had so many thousands of pounds, millions of billions of pounds saved because of that movement.
Yeah, it was a lot, actually. They did, the British Society of Human Genetics, he did work out for me the figures, and it was quite a lot. It was eye-watering amounts each year was being saved.
And how did you feel after that? Did you feel nervous? Did they get into? Was there any sort of
no? Because they got their directive through.
So it didn't.
So it didn't
so that
affect
next bit-
anything. It was just myriad genetics that I thwarted.
Amazing.
And that I'm not bothered about. You know, they're in at Utah and they're miles away, and they're not a big fish really.
And again, you think that the journey's going to sort of stop there, and again, it doesn't. So, till next time.
I think possibly that would be a good time to stop, because there's a few other bits and pieces like the insurance industry, and that was an interesting point. I got a contact from the Today programme actually. There was a debate going on in Parliament, and by this time I'd been quite a known person on the Today programme, because I did 3 interviews in 1 week over when there was the vote about the gene patent. But anyway, I did this interview about the debate in Parliament over the insurance industry and the patenting of genes. And I said, well, I'm a bit on the fence here, because I said, I think that insurance is about shared risk, because that's how it's always been. I said, but equally, I can see the point that it wouldn't be right for somebody with a faulty gene to be able to go and insure themselves for £1 million.
Knowing full well
knowing that they're just going to just give their family a load of money. So I said, what I think should happen is, I think that everybody should be able to get a mortgage, say up to 200,000, and, you know, that could be index linked or something like that, so that everybody can get a mortgage. And if anybody was trying to get a genetic test, or a mortgage or life insurance for millions of pounds, then they can ask for a genetic test. But on a, let's have a blanket thing. Well, I couldn't believe it. That morning in Parliament, I got the Hansard, which is the record of what's actually said in Parliament, and Alan Milburn, he quoted me verbatim, word for word, what I'd said off the cuff.
No way.
In Parliament. It got adopted. That was in the early 2000s, and there is still a moratorium over genetic testing and the insurance company and insurance companies. Insurance companies still aren't allowed to ask for a genetic test unless it's an excessive amount, and the amount keeps going up every year. And they used 200,000. They used my figure that I came up with as the starting point. I mean, I just kind of like, what
is going on here?
I mean, I've only just said it, I'm not saying it as an authority. I'm saying it as, just my observations,
And then it gets used, and it's still used today.
Yeah, that's right.
And again, that was this massive, massive thing, and there's still so much more. Still so much more to explore.
We'll leave it till next time, eh?
Till next time.